They called it a trial, but everyone knew it was an execution. Commander Marcus Hale stood in chains before the towering assembly of the Galactic Council. Above him, dozens of species peered down from their gilded seats, feathered, scaled, gelatinous, all united in their disdain for the one species that refused to kneel: humanity. The lead speaker, an ancient serpent-bodied being called High Chancellor Erevoth, let the words drip with venom. By decree of this council, humanity is hereby exiled beyond the regulated sectors. Your worlds are forfeit, your fleets disbanded. Any who trespass will be hunted as vermin. The crowd roared their approval. Marcus didn't flinch. His body ached from weeks in a council prison, but his voice remained iron. You fear us because we refuse to submit. You fear us because we adapt. Today you send us away. Tomorrow you'll beg for mercy. A flurry of indignant hisses followed. No mercy would be shown to the insolent apes of soul. The guards dragged him from the chamber, but even through the jeers, Marcus saw something in the faces of his crew: rage, fire. They would not die in exile. They would rise. The sentence was swift. 28 colony ships, their jump drives locked to the outermost fringes of known space. No weapons, no support, no way back. The Council's logic was simple. Starvation, internal conflict, or alien predators would wipe humanity from the galactic stage. But they had underestimated one thing: human desperation breeds ingenuity, and human betrayal breeds vengeance. The months that followed were brutal. The outer reaches were a wasteland. Dead stars, unstable systems, uncharted dangers. The colony ships drifted through storms of radiation, hunted by pirate bands and alien warlords eager to pick apart the last of humanity. Marcus took command where leadership faltered. On the flagship Iron Requiem, he united the surviving captains under one code: adapt, conquer, expand. There was no choice. Civilization would not survive by hiding. They stripped derelict stations for tech, reverse-engineered alien drives, modified weapons in secret. On shattered moons and toxic worlds, they built strongholds, hidden, silent, growing in the dark. It was slow, ruthless work. Many died. Many questioned whether exile wasn't mercy after all. But Marcus drove them forward with a singular vision: an empire beyond imagination, forged not in council halls, but in the unforgiving crucible of the fringe. A decade passed. The galaxy forgot about them. The council believed the humans had withered away. Another failed species cast into oblivion. Then came the first sign. A pirate fleet, one that had harassed border worlds for years, was found utterly destroyed. Ships torn apart with weapons no known faction possessed. Whispers began to spread in shadow markets and mercenary dens. A new force was rising out beyond the mapped sectors. Human war bands clad in black steel. Ships with terrifying new tech. Soldiers that fought with merciless precision. They called them exiles. Ghosts of a species that should have died. Marcus stood now on the bridge of a new vessel, the battleship Vanguard. Gone were the chains of exile. His officers wore uniforms of a new order. Human flags hung in their war rooms, and behind them, an armada of refitted ships prepared for war. A junior officer approached. "Sir, scout reports confirm Border System 7. Kappa holds a major council logistics hub." Marcus's scarred mouth twitched into a grim smile. "Then we take it." His voice echoed through the command deck. "They cast us out. They stripped us of home and pride. But we have built something greater. An empire of strength, forged by blood and fire." The fleet moved as one, engines flaring to life. The council would soon learn: humanity does not forget. Humanity does not forgive. Humanity rises. The jump into the 7 Kappa system was clean, undetected. Marcus stood at the Vanguard's command table, eyes on the growing tactical display. The Council's logistics hub spun in orbit around a pale gas giant, a vast installation of cargo spires, refinery rigs, and shielded bays. Dozens of civilian and Council military transports came and went under the protection of a token fleet, a handful of older destroyers, and automated defense satellites. "Pathetic," muttered Commander Blake, Marcus's second-in-command, a broad-shouldered veteran of the Fringe Wars. "They still think we're hiding in caves." They won't think that for long, Marcus replied coldly. For 10 years, they'd bled and suffered in the void, scavenging, building, evolving. Their ships no longer bore the clumsy designs of their council era. Every vessel in the fleet bristled with railguns, plasma casters, stealth plating, a fusion of human ingenuity, and the best alien tech they'd stolen or repurposed. And now, they were ready to strike. The battle plan was brutal in its simplicity. First wave, stealth frigates to disable the comm relays. No message would escape the system. Second wave, heavy cruisers and assault ships to punch through the outer defenses and board the station. Third wave, the Vanguard and her escort hammer to the anvil, delivering the final blow. Marcus gave the order. The fleet surged forward in silence, black hulls shimmering against the stars. The first explosions came within minutes. On the tactical display, comm towers erupted in blooms of plasma, leaving the station deaf and blind. Panic swept through the Council defenders. Without coordinated targeting data, their satellites fired wild. 2 human frigates took glancing hits, but continued on, launching swarms of decoy drones. Phase 2, Marcus ordered. Blake grinned and slammed his fist onto the compad. All ships, release the wolves. The assault ships broke formation, diving through gaps in the confused defenses. Railgun slugs ripped into aging destroyers, crippling them in seconds. Boarding craft latched onto station airlocks like predatory insects, cutting through with plasma torches. The Council had grown fat and lazy. Their guards weren't ready for the sheer ruthlessness of the human assault teams. Veterans of savage frontier wars, where hesitation meant death. Marcus watched it unfold without expression. He'd trained them for this. He'd built them for this. Inside the station, it was carnage. Council soldiers in gleaming ceremonial armor fell before squads of grim, battle-scarred humans armed with compact coil rifles and hard shields. They moved in coordinated packs, clearing corridors, setting charges, taking control of vital sectors with terrifying speed. At the main data core, a young tech named Decker, one of Marcus's most promising recruits, sliced into the Council systems, downloading vast archives of fleet schedules, supply routes, and secret communications. "Sir," he radioed back to Vanguard, voice tight with excitement. "They've got priority intel here. Classified directives, something big. Looks like a council-wide mobilization order." Marcus's eyes narrowed. "Copy. Secure everything. We leave no trace." Already, human engineers were rigging the station's reactor for controlled detonation. The message was clear. The exiles weren't here to conquer. They were here to dismantle. An hour later, the operation was complete. The fleet regrouped beyond the planet's shadow, trailing captured freighters and data halls. The Vanguard hovered at the heart of the formation, her guns still hot from the assault. Marcus stood alone in his quarters, reviewing the stolen intel. Blake entered, helmet under one arm, face strewn with soot and blood. "You should see the vids coming in, Commander. The Council won't be able to cover this one up." "They'll try," Marcus said flatly. He pointed to the display, "but they're too late. Look." Blake's eyes widened as he read. The mobilization order wasn't routine. It was a preemptive strike plan. The Council was gearing up for a massive campaign, but not against the exiles, against Earth. It hit Marcus like a punch to the gut. Earth, the cradle they'd been forced to abandon, the home they'd been denied, and now the Council meant to finish the job, to erase even the last remnants of humanity that remained inside official space. "They still fear us," Blake said bitterly. "Even after they cast us out." Marcus's jaw tightened. "Not fear, arrogance. They think we'll stay in the shadows while they burn what's left of our people." Blake leaned forward. "What's the play, sir?" Marcus didn't hesitate. "We hit them first hard. We show them the price of betrayal." Within hours, the Exile High Command convened aboard the Vanguard. The room hummed with tension. Fleet captains, warlords of the fringe, veterans of shattered colonies. All of them owed their survival and their newfound power to Marcus's vision. He stood at the head of the table, gaze hard. "The Council moves against Earth," he announced. The growl that followed was feral. These men and women had family, blood ties still bound to that distant blue world. "They believe we are scattered, weak, but we have built something far greater than they ever imagined. A star map flickered to life, showing a network of hidden exile strongholds, black-flagged fleets, and allied mercenary groups. Dozens of new shipyards churned out vessels of cutting-edge design, elite human strike teams trained in zero-gravity boarding and electronic warfare. Black markets now funneled resources and intelligence from deep within Council space. What we have built, Marcus continued, voice cold as steel, is an empire, one that answers to no council, no alien law, only to our survival. And our revenge. A grim cheer rose. The next phase began in secret. Under Marcus's orders, agents infiltrated Council trade hubs, sowing false intelligence, sparking chaos along key supply routes. Pirate bands once hostile to humans now flew exile colors, lured by promises of plunder and advanced tech. The exile fleets multiplied, fueled by captured resources and brutal efficiency. Word began to spread in backwater sectors. A new human empire was rising in the void, ruthless, adaptive, and utterly unforgiving. Marcus knew the Council would respond soon. The cowardly bureaucrats would send their fleets, their enforcers. Good, that was exactly what he wanted. In a darkened chamber aboard the Vanguard, Marcus stood before a memorial wall. Names etched in raw metal. Names of those lost during the exile. Friends, family, soldiers who died building this new order. He reached out, fingers brushing the cold surface. But they thought they could break us, he said quietly. They thought exile was a death sentence. A voice answered from the doorway. Blake, they were wrong. Marcus turned. His eyes burned with the fire of a man who had lost everything, and now had everything to gain. We're not exiles anymore, he said. We are emperors of the void. The first Council fleet arrived in System Theta 9, 3 weeks after the fall of 7 Kappa. It was a show of force. 25 warships bearing the Council's blue and silver banners, led by the dreadnought Judicator's Wrath. Their objective was simple: sweep the sector, find these so-called exiles, and burn them out. Arrogance defined their approach. The Council hadn't fought a real war in decades. They were used to crushing rebellious client races, not facing a human fleet, bred in the deadliest corners of the void. Marcus Hale watched their advance from the Vanguard's command deck, deep within an asteroid belt 2 systems away. They're moving exactly as we predicted, said Blake, smirking. Open formation, overrayant on long-range targeting. They expect pirates, not us. Marcus nodded. Then let's give them a proper introduction. The Vanguard led a strike group of 15 heavy warships, supported by wings of fast attack corvettes and stealth frig. Every ship was coated in next-gen adaptive armor, designed to blend into deep space and confuse enemy sensors. They moved through the blackness like a pack of predators. Theta 9's primary was a bloated red star, its unstable gravity well, littered with debris fields and derelict mining rigs, perfect cover for the exiles. Marcus had chosen this ground carefully. As the Council fleet entered the inner system, the trap closed. It began with electronic chaos. Without warning, Council comms were flooded with false signals and sensor echoes. Their targeting computers scrambled, detecting phantom fleets and ghost missiles. Moments later, the real attack hit. A wave of exile corvettes surged from the debris field, moving at impossible vectors. High-velocity railgun rounds tore through unshielded sectors of the Council's outer screen. 3 frigates disintegrated in the opening volley. Council captains shouted orders, trying to regroup, but the exile ships refused to fight by the old rules. They weaved through the fleet, striking from unexpected angles, vanishing before counterfire could lock on. Then the heavy hitters arrived. The Vanguard and her sister ships, Iron Requiem and Black Lance, burst from hyperspace less than 50 kilometers off the Council's center line, point-blank range. Marcus's voice rang through the deck. All batteries, fire at will. A brutal salvo of plasma lances and hyperkinetic shells hammered the Judicator's Wrath. Her forward shields buckled under the assault. Secondary explosions rippled down her spine. In the chaos, exile boarding pods launched, attaching to Council cruisers and disgorging armored human marines. In tight corridors, the fighting was hand-to-hand. Blades, shotguns, raw brutality. Council officers bred for ceremonial command were no match. On the Vanguard's bridge, Marcus watched it unfold with clinical precision. "Status?" he asked. Blake grinned savagely. "Council fleets in full retreat. 3 heavies down. Another crippled. We're taking prisoners. Command staff. The dreadnoughts is venting atmosphere. They won't recover." Marcus allowed a small nod. "Broadcast on all frequencies. I want every sector to hear this." Across the system, a chilling message echoed in perfect cold standard. "To the Council and its lapdog fleets, you exiled us. You sought our extinction, but we have returned. Stronger, smarter, ruthless. Every blow you strike against humanity will be answered 100-fold. This is your only warning." The voice, Marcus's voice, would spread far beyond Theta 9, carried on pirate relays and black market comms. The political shockwaves were immediate. Within days, the Council High Command convened an emergency session. Footage of the Theta 9 massacre leaked to neutral sectors. News channels across the galaxy buzzed with stories of a human warlord empire rising beyond the fringe. Trade routes through adjacent sectors ground to a halt. Council-aligned corporations pulled assets from frontier stations. Mercenary companies hedged bets, some even approaching exile agents with offers of alliance. Marcus read the reports in silence aboard the Vanguard, Blake pacing nearby. "They're afraid now," Blake said. Finally. Marcus's expression remained grim. Not enough. Not yet. The next phase demanded something bigger, a blow that would shake the core of Council arrogance. It was then that Decker, the young tech officer who'd broken the 7 Kappa data cores, brought Marcus a discovery. "Sir," Decker said breathlessly, placing a secure data pad on the command table. "We found this in the last data hall from Theta 9. Marcus reviewed it, and his eyes narrowed. It was an inventory manifest from a Council deep space vault, one of several black sites used for forbidden tech storage, weapons too dangerous for official deployment, experimental drives, constructs banned by Council law, and the vault wasn't far, buried in the Aurort cloud of a minor system barely defended thought secret. It was an opportunity Marcus couldn't ignore. The plan was daring, reckless. Some would say, strike a Council black site in the heart of regulated space, steal their most guarded weapons, and escape before the Council could react. But Marcus thrived on risk. Within a week, a task force was assembled. Fast ships, elite crews, hand-picked Marines. Before departure, Marcus addressed them himself. "They sent us into the void to die," he began, voice hard. "We built an empire instead. Now we take what they fear the most. Their own power turned against them." His gaze swept the room. "We don't fight for honor. We don't fight for peace. We fight for survival, and for the right to never kneel again." The assault on Vault Sigma 13 was swift and brutal. Emerging from a precision hyperspace jump, Exile stealth frigates shredded the station's meager defenses within minutes. Marcus personally led the boarding teams, armored in jet-black suits, armed with advanced breaching gear and next-gen coil rifles. Inside the vault was a labyrinth of sealed chambers and automated security. Human ingenuity cracked it. By the time Council reinforcements arrived, the exiles were already vanishing into the dark, carrying with them weapons and data that could reshape the balance of galactic power. News of the heist spread faster than Council sensors could suppress it. Entire sectors erupted in panic. Council allies whispered doubts. Fringe worlds, long resentful of Council rule, began reaching out to exile envoys. And through it all, the legend of the human empire grew. Marcus studied the ripple effect carefully. "They underestimated how many enemies they've made," Blake said, watching the latest intelligence feeds. "Whole sectors are ready to break if we give them a push." Marcus nodded slowly. "That push is coming." He looked out across the void, where the newly forged exile fleets gathered in hidden shipyards. Bigger, deadlier with each passing week. "We've shown them fear," Marcus said. "Now we show them war." The retaliation came sooner than expected. Barely a month after the Vault Sigma 13 raid, Council war fleets surged across the frontier, burning neutral ports suspected of harboring exiles. Civilian convoys were seized, outer colonies bombarded from orbit, entire families taken as suspected collaborators. Marcus watched the reports in grim silence from the Vanguard's war room. They hadn't just declared war on the exiles, they'd declared war on all of humanity. "Cowards!" Blake snarled, slamming a gauntleted fist against the table. "They can't find us, so they slaughter the unarmed." Marcus's gaze was ice. "That's why they'll lose. They don't understand the void anymore. They think it obeys their rules." Around them, senior captains and warlords murmured agreement. The council's brutality was backfiring, turning once neutral worlds into angry, desperate allies. Resistance cells were popping up across council space, reaching out to the exile network for aid. Marcus leaned forward, voice low but steady. "It's time we stopped reacting. Time we forced them onto the defensive." Blake grinned wolfishly. "You've got a target." Marcus tapped the star map. Elysium Station. The room went still. Elysium Station wasn't just any council installation. It was a symbol, a massive orbital habitat and trade nexus at the heart of Sector 12, untouched by war for generations. A place where council elites weighed and dined beneath domes of imported Earth glass, pretending the galaxy was still theirs. Its defenses were formidable. Its political value was priceless. A strike there wouldn't just hurt the council militarily, it would humiliate them. The plan was audacious, the kind of operation only Marcus would dare. While the main exile fleets continued raids along the frontier, a smaller elite strike force would hit Elysium fast and hard, disable its shields, broadcast the attack live, its infrastructure, not destroy it, but defile it. A message in blood and fire. Nowhere was safe. Preparations began at once. 3 weeks later, the Vanguard led a stealth flotilla into deep slip space. Cloaked transports carried shock troops, the best of the exile legions, while electronic warfare frigates prepped to scramble council comms. Marcus addressed his men one last time before the jump. "Today we strike at their heart," he said. "Not for conquest, not for plunder, for vengeance. For every brother and sister they've murdered, for every child burned in their cleansing raids." He let the words sink in. "Leave none of them safe. Leave none of them certain." A dark roar answered him. The battle for Elysium began at 0300 station time. The first wave, cyber warfare strikes, blinded orbital sensors and disabled defense drones. By the time alarms sounded, exile breaching ships were already cutting through the outer rings. Marcus led from the front as always. He crashed through council security lines with ruthless precision, coil rifle barking short lethal bursts. Behind him, black armored Marines cleared corridors room by room. The station's gilded halls ran red. In the central broadcast tower, Decker and his tech squad hacked into the station's public feeds. Across the sector, trillions watched in stunned horror as the feed shifted. No longer polished council propaganda, but live footage of their leaders graveling under the guns of exile soldiers. And over it all, Marcus's voice. "You exiled us. You hunted us. You butchered our children. Now we stand here in the heart of your rotten empire, unbroken. We are the future. You are the past." The feed cut to static. By dawn, Elysium was crippled. Council survivors fled in panic. Commerce across Sector 12 ground to a halt. The elite who'd once toasted humanity's exile now cowered behind locked blast doors, fearing every shadow. And the exiles. They vanished into the void once more, leaving only scorched banners behind. The political fallout was nuclear. Half the council demanded immediate all-out war. The other half, the old merchants and diplomats, whispered of negotiation, fearing further humiliation. In the shadows, more human factions rose. Former Earth colonies that had once stayed neutral began pledging fealty to Marcus's banner. Fringe mercenary clans swore allegiance in exchange for exile tech and protection. The empire of the exiles was no longer rumor, it was fact. Back aboard the Vanguard, Marcus studied the shifting map of alliances and fronts. Blake entered, tossing a data chip onto the table. "More requests for alliance," Blake said, and his smile turned grim. "One council defector." Marcus arched a brow. "Who?" Blake keyed the display. A familiar face appeared. Admiral Korath, former council fleet commander, now under arrest by his own superiors for failure of duty at Theta 9. "He wants asylum," Blake said, "and he's offering this." The display flickered to a classified fleet movement schedule. Marcus considered it. "Bring him aboard. I want to hear it from his own mouth." The interrogation was brief. Korath, stripped of his rank insignia, but still proud, met Marcus's gaze without flinching. "You hate us," Marcus said flatly. "I hate the fools who run the council," Korath replied. "I told them Theta 9 was a trap. They wouldn't listen. They threw my men to the void. And now you come to me," Marcus said. Korath leaned forward. "I don't ask for forgiveness, but I will give you this." He gestured to the fleet data. "Because I would rather see humans rule the stars than see them exterminated by alien cowards." Silence. Then Marcus nodded once. "Welcome to the Empire." With Korath's intelligence, new opportunities opened. A vulnerable shipyard here. An isolated convoy there. Weak points in the Council's supposedly impenetrable core sectors. Marcus moved swiftly. Over the next month, the Exiles struck with surgical precision. One by one, critical Council assets fell, not to massive invasions, but to coordinated raids and subversion. Dockyards burned. Fuel depots vanished. Communications hubs were hijacked. The Council's economy began to fracture. And through it all, Marcus remained the architect of it all. Relentless, methodical, unforgiving. In the war room aboard the Vanguard, Blake watched the latest reports with grim satisfaction. "We're winning," he said. "You've done it." Marcus's gaze remained hard. "Not yet." Blake frowned. "What do you mean?" Marcus zoomed the map to one blinking red sector. "Sol, Earth? The Council hasn't forgotten Earth," Marcus said. "They're still preparing a final purge. Once they launch it, they'll either break humanity forever or lose everything." He turned, eyes burning. "We strike before they can." The room fell silent. Everyone knew what that meant. A full Exile war fleet, something they had never yet revealed openly, marshaled for one purpose: to liberate Earth or to die trying. The fleet mustered in the shadow of a dying star. Sector X-19, an uncharted graveyard of failed colonies and blackened hulls. To the Council, a void best avoided. To the Exiles, the perfect staging ground. 1,000 ships gathered. Sleek black destroyers, retrofitted battleships, stealth frig with alien-inspired hulls, cargo haulers repurposed into mobile forges, churned out drones and munitions by the ton. And at the heart of it all, the Vanguard, no longer a single flagship, but the throne of an empire born from exile. Marcus Hale stood alone on the observation deck, gazing out at the growing armada. In 10 years, they had crawled from the gutter of galactic space. Now they prepared to strike at the heart of their betrayers, at Earth itself. The Council believed the old homeworld, vulnerable, politically isolated, its defenses obsolete. They had even begun moving cleansing fleets into staging positions, fleets that would reduce the last human stronghold to ash. Marcus intended to meet them first. Blake joined him, gauntleted boots echoing on the steel deck. "They're ready," Blake said. His voice carried a grim reverence. "Every ship we could bring, every captain who still remembers why we fight." Marcus nodded once. "Good." Blake hesitated, then added, "We'll take losses." Marcus's gaze was cold. "We always do." A moment of silence passed. Then Marcus turned. "Bring in the War Council." The war room thrummed with tension. Hardened men and women ringed the tactical table. Fleet captains, Black Ops commanders, logistics masters. Decker stood among them now, scars on his young face from Elysium, eyes burning with purpose. Even Admiral Korath was present, now clad in simple black. No longer Council, but exile. Marcus spoke first. "The Council moves for Earth. Their fleets gather in Sector 8 Beta. Their transports are prepped for orbital cleansing." His voice sharpened. "If they succeed, humanity is broken forever." He keyed the display. The map shifted, showing a spiderweb of jump lanes and Council garrisons. "But they believe we will not strike openly. They believe we fear the numbers arrayed against us." He looked around the table. "They are wrong." The plan was ambitious, reckless, as all their greatest victories had been. While false intelligence misled the Council toward decoy attacks along the frontier, the Exile main fleet would spearhead through the weakest point of the inner jump network, a chaotic route known as the Blood Corridor. littered with gravitational anomalies. No sane commander used it, but Marcus had mapped it personally through long dead-odd archives and recovered nav beacons. It would bring them within a week's jump of Sol, unseen, unprepared for. Blake grinned when he saw it. Mad bastard. You'll pull it off. Marcus said nothing. Victory was the only option. Preparation began at once. Engineers worked round the clock, refitting every ship for sustained combat. Cargo holds were gutted for extra munitions. Shield generators pushed to their limits. New weapons, some stolen from Vault Sigma 13, installed at last. On troop carriers, thousands of Exile Marines drilled for ship-to-ship boarding and planetary assault. These weren't raw recruits. They were killers. Hardened veterans of the Fringe Wars, of pirate hunts, of Council Station raids. Marcus himself inspected each regiment. His words were simple. You fight for the blood of your people. You fight for the children they burned. You fight to carve our place in the stars. No mercy, no surrender. The roars that answered shook the decks. Yet not all news was good. One evening, Decker brought a disturbing report. "Sir," he said, eyes grim, "we've detected encrypted council transmissions from inside our fleet." Marcus's face darkened. "Traitor? Possibly more than one," Decker said. "We're running deep scans now." Marcus's voice dropped to a cold growl. "Find them quietly." Blake's jaw clenched. "If they warn the council, they won't." Marcus would see to that personally. It took 2 days. When the traitors were revealed, a small cell of mercenary captains bought off with council credits. Marcus wasted no words. They were executed in front of their crews. No speeches, no pleas. Only the crack of coil pistols in the cold air. A brutal reminder. In the Exile Empire, betrayal meant death. Finally, the hour came. The fleet stood ready, engines primed, jump routes calculated to the last decimal. Marcus addressed them from the Vanguard's command hall, the transmission echoing to every ship, every soldier. "You know why we fight. They exiled us. They hunted us. They bombarded our colonies. They shattered our worlds. And yet we rose. Now we take the heart of the stars. Not for peace, not for vengeance alone, but because this is our right. We are the empire born of exile. And tomorrow, they will remember what it means to cross humanity." The roar of the fleet's response shook the void. The jump into the blood corridor was violent. Gravitational tides strained engines to breaking point. Several escort craft were lost. Others veered off course, vanished into anomalies. But Marcus had prepared for this. For 6 brutal days, the fleet navigated the corridor, battered, tested, but unbroken. On the 7th day, battered ships emerged into Sector 1 Foxtrot. One jump from Sol. Decker ran scans. Council fleet presence minimal. They didn't see us coming. Marcus's gaze was steel. Plot the final jump. As the fleet regrouped, the last Council of War convened aboard the Vanguard. Blake leaned over the tactical display. "We're down 15 ships, another 25 damaged, but morale's high," Corps added. "Council picket forces in system are weak, overcommitted to false fronts. They're not ready." Marcus nodded. "They'll scramble reinforcements when we strike." Blake's smile turned sharp. "Then we hold the line until Earth is ours." Marcus looked at them, the core of his empire, scarred, ruthless, loyal. "Tomorrow," he said, voice low, "we bring the war to Sol." On the observation deck that night, Marcus stood alone once more. Earth shone ahead, a distant blue light in the Black Sea, the world they had been forced to abandon, the world the Council sought now to burn, but no longer. Marcus's eyes burned with cold fire. "We are coming," he whispered, "and this time we do not beg, we do not kneel, we conquer." The fleet jumped into Sol at 0400 standard. One moment the stars of Sector 1 Foxtrot filled the void. The next, the system burned into view. The battered yet proud world of Earth hung before them, wrapped in its fragile shield net. Orbiting stations, half-dead Council battle platforms. Civilian traffic frozen mid-transit as the black wave of exile ships poured in. On the Vanguard's bridge, Marcus stood at the command table, face like iron. "Status," he ordered. Decker's voice was tight. "Minimal organized defense. Outer patrols scrambled. Council main fleet still in transit. We have ours. Blake grinned savagely. Then let's give them something to find when they arrive. The fleet surged forward. Strike wings peeled off toward key orbital platforms. Council-com hubs, anti-orbital batteries, surveillance arrays. Marcus gave the first kill order. Shut down their eyes. Railgun salvos lit the void. The first Council outposts crumpled under withering fire, their crews barely managing distress calls before the black tide consumed them. Within an hour, half the orbital defense grid was rubble. On Earth below, civilian comms erupted in panic. Unknown fleet entering orbit. Human ships exile banners. This can't be in Council command. Bunkers deep beneath Geneva arcology. Chaos reigned. High Consul Terran screamed into the tactical net. Where are the fleet reinforcements? En route, High Council. An aide stammered. They believed the main attack was in Sector 8. They've come here. You imbecile. Here. But it was too late. The Exile fleet was in high orbit. They'd seized the initiative. And worse, human-civilian resistance was rising across former Earth territories. Rebel groups activated, emboldened by the Exile broadcast. Marcus's voice echoed across all channels. To the people of Earth, rise, fight. We are here and we do not forgive. Blake leaned over the Vanguard's table, studying the latest intel feeds. Resistance cells in Europe, Asia, former Northam already attacking Council assets planetside. Marcus's expression remained cold. Good. We keep orbital dominance, hit key stations, force them to split their defense. By midday, the battle raged in full. Council reinforcements began to trickle in. Fast response cruisers, older dreadnoughts from the Martian yards. But they came piecemeal, disorganized, outmaneuvered. Exile destroyer packs carved them apart with brutal efficiency, using stealth drives, unpredictable thrust vectors, hard-learned fringe war tactics. On the Vanguard, Marcus paced the bridge, eyes locked on the tactical feed. Decker called out, Council main fleet dropping from FTL. 8 minutes to arrival. Marcus nodded. All ships, prepare. We hold orbit. We hold it at any cost. The Council's main fleet arrived in a fury. 60 warships led by the flagship Celestial Hammer. Gleaming silver hulls, shield nets shimmering, the full weight of the Council's wrath. On the bridge of the Hammer, Admiral Valen, newly promoted after Korath's defection, gave a single grim order. Exterminate them. No quarter. The void erupted in chaos. Massive Council dreadnoughts unleashed wave after wave of anti-atter torpedoes. Exile cruisers darted between them, countering with railgun volleys and plasma lances. Fighter wings tangled in brutal knife fights, debris and corpses filling the black. The Vanguard led the center line, guns blazing. Her black hull shrugged off strike after strike. Marcus stood unmoving, voice sharp over the comms. Maintain formation. They expect us to break. We don't. The first Exile ship to fall, the Resolute Blade, went down fighting, ramming a Council-heavy cruiser, even as her core breached. Her captain's last transmission for the blood they spilled for Earth. We die free. Marcus's jaw tightened. One more name for the wall, but the line held. By hour 3, the battle reached a fever pitch. Blake shouted over the den. Left flank weakening. Too many dreadnoughts. Marcus spun to comms. Deploy Reserve Wing Alpha. Hammer that flank. Push them back. Decker called out. Council signals. They're calling planetary strike authorizations. Marcus's voice turned to steel. They won't live long enough to fire. Then came the turning point. A coded burst from one of the deep agents. Former Council turncoats now feeding intel to Exile Command. Decker's eyes widened. Sir, Council command ship coordinates exposed. Vulnerable. Marcus's gaze narrowed. Target lock. All guns. The Celestial Hammer was an armored monster, but overconfident. Its screens focused on protecting the main line, not itself. The Vanguard and her sister ship, Iron Requiem, dove in, guns blazing point blank. Rail slugs breached the Hammer's midsection. Plasma storms gutted her power relays. Marcus Key, a fleet-wide burst. Finish them. The Hammer's death was a thing of savage beauty. Her core detonated, taking 3 escort cruisers with her. The shockwave sent Council formations into disarray. Across the fleet, Exile war cries echoed. The tide had turned, but victory had its price. The Exile fleet was bleeding, half the line crippled, casualties mounting on the vanguard. Alarms blared. Damage reports streamed in. Blake, blood on his face, shouted, "Hull breaches deck 7 to 9, shields fluctuating." Marcus's voice remained cold steel. "We hold Earth watches. We do not fall." And then, a new signal. Civilian channels flooded with footage. Earth cities erupting in rebellion. Council outposts overrun. Resistance banners rising. Marcus watched in silence. The people had answered. Blake turned to him. Voice. "You were right." Marcus gave no smile, no victory gesture, only a single iron order. "Press the attack. We break them now." As dusk fell over Earth, the Council fleet shattered. Scattered survivors fled for deep orbit, leaving burning wreckage in their wake. The black ships of the Exiles held the sky, and beneath them, the old homeworld rose in defiance once more. On the Vanguard's bridge, bloodied and weary, Marcus stood at the viewport. Earth gleamed below, scarred but unconquered. Blake approached. "It's done." Marcus's voice was a low growl. "It's begun." For this was no end. It was only the first blow in a new war, a war for the fate of humanity and for the stars beyond. And Marcus Hale would see it through, to the bitter end, or to the rise of an empire none would ever exile again. Earth burned, but it was free. For the first time in decades, no Council ship held orbit. The black banners of the Exiles hung from shattered orbital rings and crippled platforms. The battle had been won at a cost. Marcus Hale stood in the Vanguard's war room, surrounded by exhausted captains and bloodied officers. The fleet was battered, nearly a third of their ships disabled or destroyed, thousands dead, but they still stood, and beneath them, Earth rose. Blake's voice was rough, laced with smoke. "Rebel forces report full control of Geneva, New York Arc, parts of Asia, and the Africans. Council forces retreating underground. Civilians taking justice into their own hands." Marcus nodded grimly. He'd expected as much. Years of Council tyranny didn't vanish overnight. Decker, bruised and burned, added, "Intercepted Council comms. They're regrouping. Core sectors already mobilizing. Reinforcements incoming within weeks." Marcus's gaze turned to iron. "Then we hold Earth, we fortify, and we send them a message they'll never forget." The occupation began the next dawn. Exile dropships descended through the scorched skies, disgorging black armored Marines into half-ruined cities. Priority 1, root out remaining Council strongholds. No quarter, no prisoners. Priority 2, secure key infrastructure, orbital elevators, shipyards, data hubs. Priority 3, control the narrative. The world must see who rules now. Marcus led the first strike team into the shattered Geneva arcology. Council banners lay torn across the marble corridors. Blood smeared the walls. Civilians huddled in makeshift camps, watching with weary eyes as Exile troops swept through. In the Council's former throne room, Marcus stood before a wall of chained prisoners. Council governors, enforcers, collaborators. Blake spat on the floor. "What do you want done with them?" Marcus's voice was cold steel. "Broadcast it. The world watches." Across every surviving screen and comm channel, Earth saw justice. One by one, the worst of the Council loyalists were executed. Their crimes read aloud. Not trials, not mercy, judgment. The message was clear. The old order is dead. But with victory came harder choices. 2 days into the occupation, Blake brought troubling news. Refugee influx. Tens of thousands from outer colonies, from Council-controlled zones. They're flooding toward Earth, seeking protection. Marcus's jaw tightened. Resources were already stretched thin. Earth's cities were in ruins. Blake continued, voice low. "And not all of them are clean. Council plants, agitators. We've intercepted comms." Marcus said nothing for a long moment. Then, "Screen them all. No tolerance. Any risk? Gone." Blake nodded, understanding the unspoken order. It would not be pretty, but it would be necessary. Meanwhile, in the deep halls of the Vanguard, Marcus met with Admiral Korath. The former Council commander had proven his worth in the battle. Now he brought intelligence that chilled even Marcus's blood. "They're calling a full emergency conclave," Korath said. "All core sectors. Emergency war footing. They'll bring everything. Super dreadnoughts, siege fleets, the old weapons." Marcus's gaze was ice. "How long?" Kor didn't hesitate. "Weeks. No more than 2 cycles." Blake growled. "Bastards won't give up, will they?" Marcus spoke quietly. "Neither will we." Preparation began at once. The Vanguard shipyards worked without pause, refitting damaged ships. Orbital platforms were rebuilt into brutal gun fortresses. Planetary shield arrays, half-forgotten relics of old wars, were unearthed and restored. And across the surface, the Exile legions trained, hardened killers. No longer the hunted, now the defenders of Earth. But not all threats came from beyond. On the 6th day, Decker stormed into Marcus's chamber. "Sir, Council infiltration. Deep cells. They're targeting rebel leaders, spreading false intel, trying to fracture us." Marcus's voice turned to iron. "How deep?" Decker hesitated. "Too deep. Some in our own ranks." A colder man might have faltered. Marcus simply said, "Purge them, every last one." What followed was ruthless. Dozens of suspected agents dragged from hiding. Interrogations, executions. Entire factions within the rebel leadership disappeared. Those who hesitated to fully embrace the Exile banner. Some called it tyranny. Some whispered of Marcus becoming what he fought. But none dared move against him. The empire born of exile would not fall to weakness from within. On the 10th night, as storms raged over the battered world, Marcus stood alone atop the Vanguard's observation spire. Blake approached, weary but grimly satisfied. "We're as ready as we can be." Marcus's eyes never left the stars. "They will come with everything." Blake nodded. "And we'll give them hell." A pause. Then Blake asked the question others had begun to whisper. "And when we win, what then?" For a long moment, Marcus said nothing. Then in a voice like stone, "Then we finish it. We burn the council to ash. No peace, no compromise, no return to the old ways. An empire born of betrayal, forged in blood, would claim its place among the stars. And this time, none would exile them again." The sky above Earth darkened. Long-range sensors screamed warnings across every exile ship. The void rippled. Gravimetric distortions flared. The Council superfleet had arrived. Marcus Hale stood at the Vanguard's command table, cold eyes locked on the incoming data. Decker's voice was tight. "They came through the core jump lanes. Full heavy force. 120 warships. New super dreadnoughts. Designs we haven't seen. Siege platforms, planet killer cannons." Blake leaned over the table, fists clenched. "They brought everything," Korath, grim-faced, added. "And they'll burn the planet before they let it go. That's their doctrine now." Scorched earth. A tense silence filled the room. Marcus's voice was like stone. "Then we bleed them dry first." The Exile fleet prepared to meet the storm. What remained of their battered ships formed a jagged defensive line above Earth, not in neat council-style formations, but in hardened strike groups, spread through the orbital debris fields and shattered stations. Gun platforms bristled with rail cannons and plasma lances. Planetary shields thrummed with restored power. Ancient human tech now pressed to its limits. And beneath it all, on Earth's scarred surface, millions of rebels and exile marines waited, weapons in hand, prepared for the inevitable. If orbit fell, they would fight in the ruins. In the final hours before the battle, Marcus toured the Vanguard, walking among the men and women who had followed him from exile to this, the brink of a new war or total extinction. He said little. His presence was enough. When he reached the forward observation deck, Blake joined him, gazed dark. "You know what's coming." Marcus nodded. "We hold." Blake hesitated. "And if we can't?" Marcus's eyes burned cold. "Then we make them pay in blood enough that their empire never forgets." The first shots came at dawn. Council siege platforms opened fire from deep orbit, lobbing kinetic strikes and anti-atter shells. Earth's shields held, barely, shimmering under the onslaught. Exile strike wings darted through the chaos, tearing into exposed council flanks. The void became a slaughterhouse, debris and wreckage littering the black. Marcus directed the battle with ruthless precision. "Reposition Alpha Wing. Bait them toward the debris field. Target those siege platforms. Priority 1. Hold the planetary shields. Reinforce Sector 4. His voice cut through the madness, steady as iron. Hours dragged into a brutal attrition war. Council dreadnoughts advanced, pouring fire into the Exile lines. Exile destroyers countered with suicidal hit-and-run strikes, crippling larger ships and sowing chaos. The Vanguard took hit after hit, her hull scorched and scarred, but her guns never ceased. Blake shouted over the den, "We're holding, but they keep coming. If they breach the inner line," Marcus's voice remained cold. "They won't." But the tide was turning. Council numbers began to overwhelm the defenders. More dreadnoughts entered low orbit. Siege fire intensified. Decker's voice cracked through comms. "Shield grid down to 40%. Multiple generators offline." Blake cursed. "They'll punch through soon." Then a new signal. Decker shouted. "Unknown ships entering system. Multiple signatures. Not Council." Marcus's eyes narrowed. "Source." Decker's voice trembled with shock. "Fringe warb bands. Pirates. Free fleets." They answered the call. Across the void, battered pirate ships, fringe raiders, old human warb bands surged into the fight, responding to Marcus's earlier calls for aid. Not for loyalty, not for honor, for vengeance, for blood, for the right to carve a place in the ashes of the Council. The battle exploded. A new Council formations faltered, flanks collapsing under the unexpected assault. Exile captains roared renewed orders. Gun platforms found fresh targets. Rebel fighters poured from Earth's surface, striking at exposed enemy vessels. The tide began to shift, but victory was far from certain. Council command still held reserve superweapons, including one last terrible card. Korath's voice cut through the tactical feed. "They're preparing the Terminus Lance, a planet buster. If they fire, Earth burns." Blake swore violently. "We'll never stop that monster in time." Marcus's voice was ice. "We will." He turned to Decker. "Patch me through to all Exile and Allied ships." A moment later, his voice echoed across the fractured fleet. "One target. The Terminus Lance. All wings. Converge. This is your moment. You were outcasts, betrayed, exiled, but now you are the sword of humanity. We hold Earth. We hold the future. Strike now." The response was instant. Exile ships broke from formation, surging towards the Terminus Lance's escort group. Fringe raiders followed, mad, fearless, seeking glory in the fire. Even crippled vessels limped into the fray, guns blazing. The assault was chaos incarnate. Council escorts fought desperately to protect the Lance. Battleships collided at point-blank range. Boarding pods latched onto enemy hulls. Marcus himself led the Vanguard into the heart of the maelstrom, guns firing non-stop. Bridge alarms screamed. Blake shouted, "Hull breach deck 9, fires in the aft section." Decker Lance charging sequence, nearing 70%. Marcus's voice was a growl. "Push through." Then the break. A battered Exile cruiser, the Iron Wraith, rammed a Council escort, creating a gap. Marcus seized it. Full thrust. Target the Lance. The Vanguard surged forward, plasma lances tearing into the superweapon's unshielded midsection. Council gunners scrambled. Too late. A final salvo breached the Lance's core. The detonation was cataclysmic. The Terminus Lance exploded in a blinding wave, consuming nearby ships. Earth's shield grid flickered, but held. Silence fell across the comms. Then a ragged cheer. Blake, bloodied, turned to Marcus. "You did it." Marcus's gaze remained cold. Not yet. With the Lance destroyed, the Council's momentum shattered. Admiral Valen aboard his flagship faced a grim choice. Council ships burned. Exile reinforcements kept arriving. And on Earth below, millions now rose. An unstoppable wave. Vale ordered retreat. The Council fleet broke. Surviving vessels fled the system, harried by Exile and pirate ships alike. For the first time in generations, Earth stood free of the Council. In the hours that followed, Marcus stood once more on the Vanguard's observation deck, watching the scarred planet below. Blake joined him. Voice, "It's over." Marcus shook his head. "No." He turned, eyes burning with grim purpose. "It's begun." For this was no victory to rest upon. The council still ruled the core sectors, still commanded vast fleets. But now the myth of their invincibility was broken, and Marcus Hale's empire, born of exile, forged in blood, stood ready to rise. In the days that followed, exile emissaries spread across the stars. Worlds long silent now pledged allegiance. Fractured human colonies sent envoys. And in the black halls of the vanguard, Marcus spoke to his war council. We do not rebuild the old. We do not seek peace with traitors. We forge a new empire, one where no human kneels to alien masters again. And we bring the council to its knees. Across the void, the call echoed. A new war was coming, and at its heart stood Marcus Hale, the exiled, the unbroken, the emperor of the void.